For us to be truly sustainable in this journey of SAF, in my opinion, is we have to set up locally, because there's everything that we need to set up locally. And if the larger manufacturers are not willing to do it, it doesn't mean we don't have capability in Kenya, so we'll just help them to develop it. And our vision as Kenya Airways is to contribute to the sustainable development of Africa. So we see ourselves taking up that kind of space, that if the capability is in there, we support our local manufacturers to develop it.
Welcome to Sustainability in the Air, the world's first podcast dedicated to sustainable aviation. I'm your host, Shashank Nigam, the CEO of Simplifying. Every Thursday, I have important conversations with top aviation executives, technology entrepreneurs, and policymakers helping aviation take climate action. Conversations that help separate the signal from the noise. Whether you are a frequent flyer or an airline executive, if you care about sustainability or simply love traveling, welcome aboard. My guest today is Grace Vihenda. Grace leads innovation and sustainability at Kenya Airways and is the first guest we have on the show, finally, after trying so hard, from the African continent. I'm so excited. Grace and her team participated in the SkyTeam Sustainable Flight Challenge for the last 2 years and became the first airline to uplift sustainable aviation fuel in the entire continent. When I spoke with Kenya Airways CEO Alan Kilabuka, he was extremely proud of what Grace and her team has done. And today, we dive deep into what it takes for a fast-growing airline like Kenya Airways from the African continent to become sustainable. You and I first met in Dubai at the Dubai Air Show.
Yeah.
You said Kenya has an abundance of feedstock, which is sunshine, but no SAF companies are willing to take advantage of it. I wonder if you can just unpack that for us and tell us a bit more.
All right. We have, when it comes to bio feedstocks, we have quite a bit. The weather is perfect, and we have a lot of land for energy agriculture, which means people want to plant, say, for example, castor or jatropha for bio feedstocks. And also, there's a company that produces SAF that's here locally that only collects the bio feedstocks. They don't do the actual production here. So they also collect a lot of used cooking oil and animal fats and residues from agricultural products that can actually be made into bio SAF. And of course, for eSAF, we have plenty of green energy. Like what we have on our grid for is from hydro. 98% of our electricity in the grid across the country is actually hydro. And of course, we have plenty of sunshine. For eSAF, we have wind power and all that. So it's really plentiful, whether you're thinking of BioSAF or eSAF.
Still sticking on SAF, I recall that in the last SkyTeam Sustainable Flight Challenge, you actually flew a plane with SAF. I believe it was the first ever flight in all of Africa with SAF on it. How did you get there? What were the challenges?
Actually, we were wanting to understand how the SAF works in our space in terms of the costs and what it would mean for us to actually get SAF here. So the paradox is the company that I was telling you produces SAF and collects feedstocks from Kenya, produces it overseas. So we actually had to buy back our SAF.
No way. Where is this? Was this from Netherlands you bought it back? How did you bring it back?
We bought it from Italy, yeah. So we bought the SAF, brought it all the way here. We just wanted to try a 2% of SAF on that particular flight, and it was extremely difficult. First, we don't have in the country a SAF policy or framework. So it means everything from testing, from the standards and everything really pretty much doesn't exist. So we were taking the leading role in terms of also advising the government agencies, preparing them for this exercise, telling them what's happening, This is the expectation. This is how you could carry out the test using the standards for Jet A1 and all that. And so it was very educative overall of us educating our stakeholders, educating our customers, educating even our own staff on what SAF is, why we're doing this exercise, why is it important. And then when we had the SAF here, there was no blending capabilities. So we had to, again, work with a local supplier who did not know they actually had blending capabilities. So we helped them to build that capability and to actually carry out the blending for us in support of the company that we were working with. They supported the small company to be able to do the blending for us and to be able to fuel our aircraft. So it was painful in some ways in terms of just getting through the different regulatory agencies to accept what we were doing, and for us to do everything end to end took a lot of time. Pretty much was on test basis, and we had no infrastructure to support it whatsoever. Yeah, but eventually we did it. So it's the first SAF flight intercontinental out of Africa, but there's actually been previous SAF flights in South Africa when they were testing some SAF that was being developed locally at that time, sometime in the past. So in terms of intercontinental long haul, this was the first one.
Wow, that's fantastic. Now, you of course pioneered a lot of this work. What has been the result? Is this becoming commonplace? Are the policies now set in place for you to do more of this?
Yes, the policies are actually under draft, because what we managed to create with that Sustainable Flight Challenge was a burning platform and a sense of urgency that we're able to create within the government agencies for us to begin to walk this journey. So we're very pleased to announce that actually we're in the process of drafting our first SAF policy in Kenya that most likely will be adopted across the region, because the standards will pretty much be the same. So even other countries will be able to adopt that if they would like to. And then number two, we started a collaboration, because I manage both innovation in Kenya Airways and sustainability. So we linked up with a startup that had, or rather demonstrated capability of being able to actually develop SAF. Yeah, so we started conversations with them, and also now we're actually in the process of doing our first trial of SAF and getting it tested and getting it certified. That will be actually the first locally produced SAF. And then we'll be able to scale that up over time to a point where it can actually be commercial. So yes, there's activity that we're doing that follows that up. And for us to be truly sustainable in this journey of SAF, in my opinion, is we have to set up locally, because there's everything that we need to set up locally. And if the larger manufacturers are not willing to do it, it doesn't mean we don't have capability in Kenya, so we'll just help them to develop it. And our vision as Kenya Airways is to contribute to the sustainable development of Africa. So we see ourselves taking up that kind of space, that if the capability is in there, we support our local manufacturers to develop it.
That's a very interesting vision, to promote the sustainable development of Africa as a continent. And You're definitely leading the way. Is there much awareness in your customer base around sustainability? Because my understanding is that a lot of flyers are first-time flyers. They might be sorting by price, or they're just excited to be on a plane. Do the customers demand the airline to be sustainable right now?
Yes. There's a study that was done by one of the companies that consults for us on sustainability. And it was actually showing that 64% of Kenyans, it wasn't specific to aviation, but 64% of Kenyans want to consume responsibly. So there is, you can tell customers want more responsible consumption, and therefore demand more responsible production. So from our side, we read that actually our customers are definitely interested in this sustainability subject. So therefore it becomes a priority for us to see how to deliver services to them in a way that's also sustainable.
I'm glad to hear that. Now, the context here I'm trying to bring is The fundamental issue in airline sustainability is, and Kenya and East Africa in general are growing. More
Yeah.
people want to fly. Yet you
Yeah.
have environmental voices in Europe saying we need to fly less. And there are words like demand management, right? What's your
Yeah.
view on this? Is this fundamentally unfair? How can growth be balanced with sustainability?
Well, Africa is the second largest continent. Yeah. And what actually that means is that you could fit in the US, China, Japan, Mexico, and several European countries into Africa, and they'll all fit. So basically, I'm just trying to say that Kenya is a very large continent, and the connectivity is generally very poor. Yeah. So by all indications, we are going to fly more. It's just natural that as the different countries continue to develop, we are going to fly more. And we need to actually fly more to be able to connect from west to east, from north to south. We definitely will have to fly more. So the question more for us is, how do we continue to fly sustainably over time, as opposed to that we need to fly less? So definitely we need to fly more rather than fly less. Yeah, we're still developing. We still have a lot of connectivity issues, inadequate infrastructures when it comes to transport. So air transport becomes like the most ready form kind of way of moving about. So definitely we will fly more. So it's more a question of how do we do this a lot more sustainably.
So one of the answers, of course, is sustainable aviation fuels and locally produced SAF that will allow you to make this growth sustainable. The other aspect that we have heard about is green hydrogen.
Yeah.
Green hydrogen, we've heard, is a huge opportunity for Africa, given the ample sunlight and the feedstocks. Does green hydrogen factor into your future plans as either a direct fuel source where hydrogen is powering airplanes, or as a feedstock to make e-fuels?
Definitely, we are considering green hydrogen for green fuels. I'm talking to two companies that are still in very early stage when it comes to SAF. So that is definitely in our plan to explore that further to see how we can use this technology for SAF. So definitely, it's up our alley. And currently in the country, where the use case that's most common for green hydrogen is for fertilizer, making of fertilizers. So that's already active in the country. So, but a lot of use cases are more on the agriculture side of things.
Interesting. You mentioned fertilizer. Are things like biodiesel common in Kenya already, and then is jet fuel just an additional application, or there is little biodiesel as well?
There is very little biodiesel, not commercial. Yeah, so you'd find maybe small industries just doing it for their own consumption. And that's why it's also been the journey to bio-SAF regulations has been longer, because now we have to capture everything bio in it. So it's not just for SAF only. So we'll have to add in the biodiesel and all those everything else. Yeah. So yes, exists, but not commercially.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Now, I understand that one of your subsidiary companies is also working with Eve, the eVTOL maker from Embraer. Tell us how electric taxis will fit into your vision and strategy in a country like Kenya, because I remember writing about Eve in the chapter in my book, Sustainability in the Air. And we were very fascinated by how they are working with different countries and airlines. What's the context in Kenya that you're trying to pursue?
So in Kenya, actually, just beyond the flying taxi, more of the users of the drone, because also Fahari Aviation is the name of the company, our subsidiary that does that. So their main area of focus right now is agriculture, in terms of spraying and also surveillance. And when it comes to the flying taxis, definitely we're thinking about last mile. Either for both passengers or cargo. That is also right up in our alley. As passengers who want to move from Nairobi, Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to some airport closer or some destination close by, can be able to use the air taxis. We can use that even for cargo deliveries. We can use it for emergency services. like I was telling you earlier, in Africa, the biggest problem we have is connectivity. Yeah, so the flying taxis will definitely play a big part in the connectivity where the large commercial planes cannot. Yeah, in this radiuses of 100 kilometers, 50 kilometers, it would really come in handy. And also promoting tourism, because we have a lot of wildlife, and people would take tours on the flying taxis, and of course you're having zero emissions. So there's a very beautiful story of how you're able to see the animals sustainably, and then also over and above that, actually last year in 2023, Bahari Aviation conducted the first wildlife census here in the country using drones. So that was a very interesting exercise, because the drones are much more accurate, they do the job much faster, and overall no carbon emissions. So it was quite an interesting exercise when it comes to environmental conversation and the use case of drones.
That is fascinating. So it's not just urban air mobility you're looking at. You're looking at connecting, rural, and connecting things like, going to safari, checking out some flamingos, I guess, pink flamingos, using
and elephants,
eVTOLs. That really,
and everything,
and elephants and giraffes, all of it, right?
Yeah.
Definitely fascinating.
Yeah.
We hear a lot of stories about sustainability innovation. Now, of course, you have innovation and sustainability in your portfolio, but a lot of the innovations are coming from US or countries like France. Can you give us an inspiring story from East Africa or Africa in general, where a company or an individual is doing something truly noteworthy or groundbreaking in the sustainability space?
Yeah, actually, I would tell you quite a bit, but when I was reflecting about this, basically what I was saying is that as Africans, we don't really talk a lot about what we do because there's a lot of opportunity and innovative things that different people are doing. So I'll start with Kenya Airways, and one of the what I think was a groundbreaking project that we did on sustainability that we are about to launch in about 2 months. Yeah, we work with startups. So we worked with a startup who had an idea to refine fuel into diesel or petrol, depending on what our need was at that point, from waste plastic. Yeah, so the technology already exists. It's called pyrolysis. Yeah, but now the IP here for him was actually the combination of plastics that he would actually need that would help to refine to diesel. Yeah, and so how we want to partner with him is just to utilize our own plastics and also buy plastics so that our equipment that uses diesel are able to actually use this cleaner. And actually the diesel, when we tested it, was much cleaner, had less sulfur, and had fewer emissions as compared to the traditional diesel. So as we wait to transition some of our equipment into electric, we have the opportunity of using this diesel that's obviously much, way cheaper than fuel from the pump, and of course augments our circularity story. Yeah, so that's one of them that I can talk about. But in the region, there's plenty in
Right.
e-mobility, in communication, in transport. If you have the whole day, I could sit and tell you all about it.
We have time. I'm also curious. We,
Yeah.
of course, spoke about SAF as one of the pathways. We spoke about hydrogen. You were talking about operational efficiencies.
Yeah.
Are there other critical pathways to get Kenya Airways to net zero ultimately that are important that you're exploring that you can share about?
Net zero pathways, definitely what I can add on from the traditional ones in terms of technology, getting new planes, utilizing SAF. I would say that we are also coming up with our own projects, carbon projects, so that instead of having to buy or to offset through other projects, we're actually able to use our own project to offset our own carbon. So
That's interesting. What would be an example?
So we have tree planting initiatives that we're doing across the country. We want to plant about 10 million trees. Actually, that's pretty much planting forests. So we have actually one forest that we planted 10 years ago. It's now 10 years old with huge trees. That was about 1 million trees. That was 10 years ago. So we want to do a lot more of that across the country. adopting forest lands that have been degraded across the country, adopting communities. There's actually a community that we're adopting in the north of Kenya that has a lot of disadvantaged individuals, and so closing in the gap of equality, inequality, whether it be in education, economically, and all that. So there's actually communities, whole communities that we are adopting as Kenya Airways and putting in projects so that in another 10 years, we're actually able to show you the before and after, what we did for the environment, what we did for the people, and what we did for the economy through such projects. Then those projects, we can use them to do our own offset, or even companies that want to offset with us can have an opportunity to do that.
That's very, very interesting. And I wonder, how much of a catalyst has the SkyTeam Sustainable Flight Challenge been in terms of helping you achieve your goals of sustainability or drive awareness? What's been the biggest benefit there?
The biggest benefit is it creates pressure. That you have up to May or June or October to make these decisions, to push certain partnerships so that you're able to deliver XYZ. So it's, in my opinion, it's been very good to just put the pressure to get you started, because sometimes you want to start on a project and then you keep postponing. But once you have that timeline of the Sustainable Flight Challenge is coming, you have to, really push yourself, push the teams to actually get to deliver on time. So that has been the biggest benefit that I have seen with the Sustainable Flight Challenge, just that pressure. And then the second one I would say is getting to learn from other companies and airlines, because it's a very collaborative event. You get to see what KLM is doing, you get to see what Air France is doing, you get to exchange notes, you get to learn from each other and see how to build on each other's ideas. So those actually, I'd say, the two most the key benefits that I've observed from the Sustainable Flight Challenge.
That's fantastic. Now that we're talking about it, I recall you initiated some in-flight sustainability initiatives as well, isn't it? When you did that through your menu offerings. Mm-hmm. What did you do? Farm to plate kind of thing in flight?
Everything produced, everything delivered, it was organic and from local farmers. Everything. Kenyan local farmers were producing the food. It was coming straight from their farms to their fork. How cool is that? Yeah, no preservative, not everything organic. And then when it comes to the actual preparation of the food, everything left over was 100% recycled. 100%, either into animal feed or some other form, but everything was 100% recycled.
That's amazing. I wonder what it will take to do this every single flight.
We actually do that every single flight.
You recycle all the food every single flight now?
This is at the preparation stage, not
preparation.
The food waste that comes from the passengers eating food and it's left over. That is incinerated. But when at the actual preparation stage, everything is actually recycled 100%. So the caterer that we work with, that's the agreement that we have. So they actually take their waste and either there's a process that they take it through, and then it becomes animal feed, or they use it to grow some worms. I forget what those worms are. They're also used as animal feed.
Did you say worms?
Yes.
Wow.
Or soda worms, or I forget what they're called. I could get that for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, that's totally fine.
Because of that, because pretty much they just put it in the digester, and it means actually everything is recycled 100%.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I guess for the animals, but I'm glad that there's 100% recycling. Does Kenya Airways have a net zero roadmap, like 2050, or a target year for getting to net zero? Or if not, is it in the works?
Yes, it's in the works. Actually, we are about to have it reviewed by our senior leadership as well as the board for approval. But we definitely do have an energy roadmap that includes the net zero journey to 2050. In terms of what are we tweaking, what are we changing, what are we increasing, what are we reducing. But I must say it's a tall order to actually plan to be net zero as an airline. It's a very tall order. So yes, we do have
Exactly,
roadmap.
exactly.
We are still under draft, but we'd be happy to share it once it's in a state where it can be publicly shared.
Sure, I'm looking forward to it. And given that Kenya Airways is leading the impetus for SAF production within Kenya, do you believe that Kenya can become a SAF exporting country?
I believe so. Absolutely, 100%. Because even when you think about the largest manufacturers of SAF, I see most of them are located in some place, but are always having to export across the continent to other users of SAF. So definitely I see that being an opportunity. But definitely that would have to start somewhere, right? So we're starting to see
Yeah.
how do we start the production, how do we scale it up slowly to that point where it's actually fully commercial and you're able to sell to other airlines as well.
Right. I'm looking forward to that day. What do you think it will take to get there? What are some of the biggest hurdles you believe Kenya Airways will need to overcome on its sustainability journey?
Budget and finances. Yeah. Green funding is, or rather green transition funding is quite expensive. Yeah. Though I have also seen a lot of opportunity when you're going green, you actually make savings here and there. But a lot of the times you need this large capital at the start, then it probably will pay for itself. But the point is you need large capital at the start. Yeah. So that can become quite a barrier in terms of wanting to move quickly. You have to do a lot of stakeholder engagement to secure funding or to show that this thing is actually viable. So for me, that has been the biggest barrier, just the green transition funding. So for example, we're about to set up solar panels across most of our offices. But you need that initial capital, which you have to get your stakeholders aligned to be able to put it in. But once it's in place, there'll actually be savings. Yeah. So, yes, so definitely budget.
How do you think this will be funded? Who is going to fund this? Is this funding going to come from government? Do you think this will be private investors? Do you think the bill will be, the customers will be footing the bill? Who's going to fund this transition?
The transition, customers are not willing, definitely. Though in some instances, yes, we might have to push some of the cost to the customer, but there's those that actually internally you can see will pay for themselves. So it's more an internal funding. Like there I'm talking about the solar panels, or let's say we're doing a plastic ban, or in the offices, no more plastic bottles and all that. It actually translates to a cost saving at the end of the day. Yeah, because either you get the recyclable glass bottles or whatever else that is actually much cheaper than the plastic that you were buying before. So a lot of it will be funded internally. When it comes to SAF, we're starting a SAF volunteer program for customers who want to pay a little bit extra just to support the SAF initiative. But we are not yet to a point where we are pushing the cost directly to the customer at this point. We hope that actually our efforts will be able to, one, reduce prices. Because part of the reason, I didn't tell you that when we bought SAF from overseas, it costed us about 7 times the price of jet fuel.
7 times. Amazing.
Yes. So you see, that's just like completely unsustainable when it comes to thinking about using this daily, definitely. And so one of the ways to bring that cost down is actually to have local manufacture and local production, which is what we are pushing for. So looking for ways to actually reduce the cost of the green transition so that we are passing on to the customer as little as possible. And whatever can pay for itself, we can actually build a proper business case internally to support the budgetary requirements for such projects.
Wow, I think this will be a tall order. One, to fund that gap, green premium, and second, to try to reduce that cost perhaps through local manufacturing. I mean, a lot of what we spoke about gives me confidence that ultimately Kenya and Africa should be able to produce its own sustainable aviation fuel at a price that is okay for local airlines to uplift SAF locally as well. But until then, what do you do? And what are the timelines you're looking at to get there?
In terms of the SAF production, this year for testing and certification. And then we start scale up for at least the scale up that should be enough for KQ consumption in 2025. And then after that, now go like fully commercial and sell to whoever wants to buy and all that. And the process in between, definitely fundraising, looking for opportunities from the government and other stakeholders who could fund us. Yeah, but our starting point is just to get the testing bit done, minimum viable product or minimum lovable product, and then begin to scale it up slowly from that. So this year, testing, certification, next year, scale up for operations, and then the following year keeps growing.
Okay. Now, one of the other realities is that all airlines, whether they are based in Europe or not, will have to comply with tighter carbon pricing rules from 2026 and SAF rules from 2025 if flying into the EU. You do have a major operation in places like Paris, Amsterdam, Italy. How do you meet those mandates for your European flights in the meanwhile?
In the meanwhile, unfortunately, we have to pay the fines wherever it is that there's fines imposed, like in France. But definitely, as we look at our SAF roadmap, we should be able to take care of that in terms of, one, managing our supply chain from the Europe side in terms of getting the SAF that we require, as well as producing SAF out of Nairobi for those flights. So by 2025, really, we should be ready for the SAF mandate.
Okay, well, I do wish you all the best. I'm curious, Grace, what's been your journey, your own personal journey in Kenya Airways leading to your current role heading up sustainability?
Oh, wow. That's such a nostalgic question. I have to think about my early days.
Go for it. We have all the time.
Yeah, so actually KQ has been my one and only employer. KQ, yes, is Kenya Airways. Yeah, so KQ has been my one and only employer. Came off the university, I did mechanical engineering. So I came into an engineering role for about 6 years. And then
is it common for women to come into engineering roles in the airline itself?
No, not at all. Not at all. For actually, in my class in university, we were 2 girls out of 40. Only 2 girls.
Who did mechanical engineering?
Yeah.
and when you came to Kenya Airways, were there more women?
No, there were still fewer women. In my office,
Wow.
I think out of about 15 men, we were probably like 3-4 ladies. And on the hangar floor, even much worse. On the hangar floor, the ratio is much lower. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So actually, part of the things that I'm looking at is how to increase the number of women we have in aviation, and there's a whole list of things that we are working towards. But anyway, so after that, the engineering role, I moved into operational excellence, still within the company. And then from that, I moved into a strategy role within the company, again, still within Kenya Airways. And then I had a short stint in our commercial department. So I pretty much moved everywhere. And then after that short stint at commercial department, actually, I founded the Innovation Hub with a colleague of mine who left the organization. So we founded this Innovation Hub in 2020 during COVID. And you remember, everybody in aviation, that was the most depressing period in our history of aviation. Planes were packed and we had all these pay cuts. I remember there's a time I received 15% of my salary, and I'm thinking, where do I start?
Oh, my.
Yeah. So pretty much time we encouraged our CEO to do a call for ideas from staff. I honestly didn't expect much. That time I was still in the commercial department, but staff responded overwhelmingly with a lot of ideas of things that we could do different, what we could do to help us get out of the COVID situation, which areas of our business we should strengthen. So out of that, when we processed those ideas and prioritized them, The ones that we implemented became very successful, including strengthening our cargo units. So at that time, our CEO said, then let's set up an innovation hub. So this is not like a one-off kind of thing, but we have this unit that's consistently facilitating innovation across the organization. So that's how the innovation hub was funded, was founded. And then around that time, we were doing a lot of sustainability innovation. In the business, we set up the Kenya Airways upcycling studio. By the way, we sell a lot of interesting stuff. Upcycled either from parts of the planes or our crew uniform, lighting fixtures, vases. We need a whole session for me to tell you and showcase that.
Is there an online store? We would love to include the link for the podcast listeners.
Yes, we'd like to. We are still setting up the online store. What we have right now is we're still selling physically, but soon enough, I think in about 2 months.
Like on the duty-free carts?
Not duty-free. We actually have a shop, but within our premise. Yeah, so most of the sales, but that was pretty much by design. We wanted to sell to staff more as we learn, as we see which products are selling more, what kind of feedback is coming back, what should we change, what should we improve. Yeah, so there's been quite a bit of sales going on, and we have now a lot of confidence to take it now onto the duty-free card and to take it online. Yeah, so there's that we put together and many other things around sustainability innovation, that now the business decision was taken for sustainability to sit within the innovation hub. Previously, it was sitting under the marketing department. Yeah, so my mandate was to expand the scope of sustainability, so it actually includes economic, social, and governance, and environmental. The initial focus was more of environmental, so we needed to expand that to actually cover the social aspects and the governance aspects and economic aspects. So that's what we've been able to deliver over the last 1 year or so. And that is how I became in charge of both innovation and sustainability in the organization. Yeah, it's a role that I love. Very interesting every day. There's always new things to innovate and to think about, and doing all that sustainably.
That's fantastic, Grace. Your story is truly inspiring. I was impressed when we shared the stage in Dubai. And I made a mental note that I would love to have you on the podcast. And I know after months of trying to schedule this, we have managed to do this. I'm so delighted. You becoming the first African airline on this show after 2 years. But I'm delighted that finally we have reached that milestone. And the final part of this interview is what I call the rapid fire round, in which we get to know you a bit personally. I'll ask you simple questions and you have to tell me the first answer that comes to your mind. Like, what's your favorite airline that's not Kenya Airways?
That's a hard one. Kenya Airways? Actually, I usually always request flights on KQ unless I really, really have to not to.
No choice.
But maybe I'll pick Delta.
Delta, okay. Good choice. What about your favorite airport?
Amsterdam, and I have a little story behind it.
Tell me.
The Schiphol airport. The time I was flying to Schiphol, and I did not have a Schengen visa, and then the flight was delayed. Was it delayed or cancelled? One of the two. But basically, I needed to leave the airport to go to my accommodation and come back the next day. And so when we went to see just going through the border control process, for them to give you something temporary for you to go to your hotel and come back. Those guys were extremely kind. I have actually never seen kinder security personnel.
That's amazing.
Coffee, they made sure. And we were a bunch of people, maybe 15 people.
Hold on. Did you just say they brought you coffee?
Yes.
The customs official, the immigration officials brought you coffee. Have you ever gone through TSA and US immigration just for a contrast?
Yes, I have.
Landing at JFK or Newark.
Yeah, he actually came with a notebook and pen and took orders. What would you like? Coffee. What would you like? Chocolate. Blah, blah, blah. And then he came back serving everybody what they asked for. I was like, wow, I have actually never seen this. So by default, Schiphol became my most favorite airport just because of how we were treated. And they also were very kind. They're telling us this process takes a lot of time. So you just have to be patient. So they outright just told us this is going to take time. So just be patient. This is what will happen to you. This is what we'll do. And it'll be done in another 2 or 3 hours. So it was so comfortable. They made it so easy and so comfortable, despite the fact that we had to wait for quite long.
That is a remarkable story. I have never heard at any airport immigration officials being so nice. I know in Singapore, Changi, you get candy at immigration, but that's different. Everyone gets that. This is, this is IROPS taken to a next level.
Yes.
What is your favorite book?
Do I have a favorite book? I don't have a favorite book, but right now I'm reading Working Backwards by Amazon. I don't know if you've read it. It's a very interesting book that talks about how you innovate by working backwards from what the customer wants, and then now you work the solution backwards. So it's been a very interesting book in terms of how they present the principle of innovation in Amazon and their very customer-centric nature. And really, this working backwards includes, this I found very interesting, creating a press release of the problem that you're solving. So you get the emotion and the feeling of what success looks like. And you have this press release read in front of your leadership team, and then now you work backwards. So it's very interesting concepts on innovation, and I absolutely love it. Okay,
fantastic. Very good recommendation. I will definitely check it out. Your favorite movie?
Called Working Backwards. Oh gosh, movies. I don't watch movies much, but I would say...
Not even in flight?
Actually, I watch other people's movies.
Wow.
Oh, that's an action movie. Oh. And then I get scared and then I move on to another. That's a love stories. I keep watching other people's movies, but I would say a movie that I really like to watch with my kids is Lion King.
Lion King?
Yes, the traditional classic Lion King. Yeah, I really love the storyline. Yes.
It's a classic. Indeed, a classic. What is something you like to do in your free time, Grace?
Free time, I like to spend time with my children and go swimming and write. I love to write articles, my thoughts about different things, journaling. I love to write.
Okay, maybe we'll have you write an article on the website one day on sustainability and innovation.
I'd love to.
What is something you would like to learn?
To ski.
Okay.
Skiing, yes. It's in my bucket list.
Fantastic. I can share a little story there. During the pandemic, my family and I, we moved to Whistler in Canada. Mm-hmm. And Whistler is a ski resort. And I was walking down with my neighbor, my new neighbor, 2 days after we moved there. And he looked at me and he was so shocked when I told him I don't ski or I've never skied before. And he says, I don't know anyone my age who doesn't know how to ski. And I looked at him and I said, I don't know anyone who does. and I realized that we were coming from such two different worlds. I had just moved to a ski resort, a global ski resort. Mm-hmm. And I took it upon myself to actually learn skiing. And over the next 2 years.
How long did it take it? Did it take you?
It took me about 3-4 months of going very regularly to become a decent skier. But I used to go with my kids, and kids learn really fast. So half the time I was just catching up with them. But by the time, about a year ago, until I left Whistler for London, I think I was skiing every afternoon. And I truly enjoyed it. Yeah, I was skiing every afternoon. And every afternoon. And it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, took advantage of being, living in the... It's like if you're living in the safari, you'd go for a game ride every day and check out the leopards and hang out and the giraffes. Yeah. Exactly, right? So if you're living there, so I made the best of the season. So in Whistler, you could ski all the way till May, and I did that. So
I'm looking forward to that.
In France, you can find Chamonix, or in Austria, you have Innsbruck. I think a few nice places that Kenya Airways flies to where you can learn as well.
Absolutely.
In Africa, interestingly, one of the best places in Africa to learn skiing is Lesotho.
Lesotho?
Yeah, I didn't know. I'm not sure if you knew that. Oh. But yeah, surrounded by South Africa, and that's where all the South African kids go to learn skiing.
In Lesotho? Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Definitely look forward to that.
Indeed. Final question. What is the best advice you have received, Grace?
The best advice is actually a quote that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. It's actually my all-time favorite.
I love it.
Yeah. So
I love it.
About when you change your mind, when you change how you view certain things, they stop looking as bad as you thought they were. You know, like the things that you look at actually change because you've changed the lens of your eyes, which is your mind.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
indeed.
when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
I hope on that note that with this podcast and finally having the first African airline on the show, we have changed the way people look at innovation in Africa, sustainability in Africa, and hence changing the things they see.
Absolutely. I hope so too. And that reminds me of a quote that I came across recently. It's actually a funny one. It's an African proverb, I don't know by who, but it says, a cat that dreams of becoming a lion must begin with losing its appetite for rats.
And an airline that aims to become sustainable should lose its appetite of jet fuel and get SAF.
Actually, that's exactly what I was going to say. Then you pulled it right out of my mouth.
Yeah, no, I'm glad
So
we had this conversation.
Appetite, for fossil fuel, so we can embrace SAF.
Indeed. Grace, thank you so much for sharing your side of the story from East Africa,
also
from Kenya. I think it is so inspiring, and I do wish you all the best.
I've enjoyed this. Let's do this again. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Grace. Thank you for listening to this episode of Sustainability in the Air. Aviation is one of the hardest to decarbonize industries, yet there are multiple paths to get to net zero. Awareness is key to a green future. So please give us your support to help our sustainable aviation insights reach a wider audience. You can do this by sharing this episode on your network, on LinkedIn, Twitter, or even WhatsApp. Or perhaps you might consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to this episode. You can start a conversation with us by writing to us at podcast@simpliflying, that's simply with an i.com. And for more content on sustainable aviation, please visit our website green.simpliflying.com and join the movement. Sustainability in the Air is an original podcast by Simpliflying. The show is produced by Juraj Toth in Slovakia. Dirk Singer is our Director of Sustainability, who leads research for each interviewee out of Greenwich, UK. Shubhadeep Pal is our supervising editor based out of Mumbai and Singapore. The articles are written by Ayushi Badola in Dehradun in India and Mira Hull in Montreal, Quebec. Creative design is led by Lihia Esteve in Montreal. Baiba Drimen is the project director for the show based out of Valencia, Spain. Special thanks to Wendy Sim in Singapore. And I'm Shashank Nigam, the CEO of Simplifying and your host. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.